Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name is Andre and I'm your bookworm, and today we're jumping again into fantasy. We have another book review and we're finishing a series that we started here on the channel, and that series is The Faithful and the Fallen by Gwynne, and we're reviewing Wrath. Wrath is the fourth and final volume of the series called The Faithful and the Fallen. It started with Malice, then Valor, then Ruin, and the last one is Wrath. I've reviewed all of them here, so if you want to check it out, there's the cards, there's the thumbnails. Just click on through and it will guide you to them. If you want to know what I thought of the first three volumes, although we're going to speak a bit about that towards the review. But if you want to just listen to those ones and help the channel, go on first and I'll still be here by the time you finish those. But so talking about Wrath, this book was published in 2016, so close to 10 years ago. And at the time it was nominated for 3 different awards. Unfortunately, it did not win any of them, it was just nominated for them. However, that didn't deter the fans to make a big fuss about this book, because so far in less than 10 years this book has over 26,000 ratings and an average score of 4.52 out of 5, which is quite high, and it gives us hope because usually with higher scores for the last books it means that it ends on a high, the fans are excited about it, they liked it, they like how it ended. So let's hope I think the same. We shall see. First we shall start with the synopsis. If you're new here, I'm just going to narrate the synopsis so you can get an idea of what this book is about. Even though if you're just here for the first time and you haven't read any of the other 3 books, maybe I would recommend you first go to the other reviews so you can have a better sense, because this one will involve a lot of spoilers. All the characters are pretty much developed because they're in their last book, so it'll be a bit confusing. But if you're here and you know all of it before, then just stick around. Unless you want to skip it, then just go to the next timestamp and you'll jump right into the next section, which will be the start of the review. I think I've given enough time. Let's go. Events are coming to a climax in the Banished Lands as the war reaches new heights. King Nether has taken control of the fortress at Drasil, and 3 of the 7 treasures are in his possession. And together with Kalidas and his ally Queen Rin, Nether will do anything to obtain the remaining treasures. With all 7 under his command, he can open a portal to the other world. Then Azeroth and his demon horde will finally break into the Banished Lands and become flesh. Meanwhile, Corbin has been taken prisoner by the Jotun, warrior giants, who ride their enormous bears into battle. His warband scattered, Corbin must make new allies if he hopes to survive. But can he bond with competing factions of warlike giants? Somehow he must, if he's to counter the threat Nether represents. His life hangs in the balance, and with it, the fate of the Banished Lands. And that is it for Synopsis. Now, our last housekeeping item before we jump into the review, which is looking at the scores of the previous volumes in the series. As you can see, the series had its ups and downs. We started well with a 4.2, then we jumped into a 4 with the second volume, but then the third got a 4.4. So we got a new high, and hopefully the fourth one will just climb even higher. I think some of the best moments of the third book were the plot and the writing style, as I mentioned in the review. And I think one of the good things about this series is that the world building has remained stable throughout. Now let's see if this fourth book continues this trend. Let's start with plot. And I'm a bit hesitant on starting with this category because as I started reading this book, one of the worst things that can happen for me happened. I'm not going to spoil right away. I'm just going to say that some events from the third book were completely reverted at the start of this fourth book. And I honestly do not enjoy that at all. It feels like the author regretted what he did or chickened out about these big decisions. And so he started to backtrack everything and trying to resolve or try to make sure that that didn't really happen. And I don't like that because then it makes me lose a bit of trust into the author and think that he can actually go through with tough decisions and make the plot a lot more interesting just because the plot takes some turns that you're not expecting, even though they are inevitable. But aside from that rocky start, I think that the plot is quite linear. It's not predictable per se, it just doesn't have any amazing plot twists or epic moments that I was completely mind blown. It was a good plot, but not great, if I can say so myself. And so before I jump into the spoilers, I'll just say that this category deserves a 4 out of 5 for me. However, I can say that it's also a very weak 4. It was verging on the 3, and I only gave it a 4 because I think overall the plot is still okay, despite those bad decisions made by the author. But okay, now let's just talk about spoilers for a bit. If you don't want to hear anything, just skip a minute or so, go to the next section, and I won't be talking about spoilers anymore. Okay, hope I've given enough time. But Corbin's wolf dying at the end of the 3rd book and then being revived and somehow saved completely by the start of the 4th book was a complete disappointment for me. And that's what I was saying. For me, it completely killed my sense of disbelief because now I cannot trust the author to actually push through these decisions. And whenever he kills a character, that character might not be killed because they can come back right after. So whenever some character was in danger from that point onwards, I wasn't really believing, or the stakes for me weren't there. And a similar thing happened towards the end with different characters. And so yeah, that's why for me this 4 is very, very weak, almost a 3. But now let's talk about characters, and I think this is a big contrast from the plot, because I did feel that this book had a good amount focused on the character arcs and on the development and also on their closing. I think both protagonists, the side characters, even the villains, they all had different sides to them. You could see how they could go from one point to the other throughout the series or throughout this book, and it would still make sense. And you could see journeys going from lightness to darkness or from darkness to light, and they would all be coherent. They would make a lot of sense. You could totally see how that character would go from point A to point B. And I think the themes of corruption and redemption are very big in this series, and I think the author did them very well when attaching them to characters. So for this category, I'm going to give a 5 out of 5. And next we have world building, which is that category that has remained stable throughout the series, always receiving a 4. Which is funny because I did complain throughout the reviewing these books that there were issues, I would like more of this or more of that, but it seemed like the author knew, and so the next book would actually fulfill those expectations for me. Initially was that the world didn't have much character, and then I did think that it grew a bit more. Then it was the fact that the giants didn't have a lot of depth into them, and that was fixed as well. However, when it comes to the magic, that's when I started feeling some cracks show up, because I felt that the magic was very hand-wavy and it only served specific purposes for the plot to move forward. What I mean by this is, for example, there are 7 magical items, and it seemed that only certain ones would have magical powers, and those powers would only be useful for the characters in specific moments. Whereas to be coherent with the rest of the world, I would consider that all of those items would have some sort of magic, and they would have the magic show up at different events in different times, and therefore it wouldn't just be when this one is important, suddenly it shows up, when that one is important, then that one will show up. So yeah, so it seemed like some decisions that the author made were a bit strange, and I wonder why he made it. It seemed that it was just very pointed at helping the plot, when I think it shouldn't just serve the plot, but give character to the world. So for me, this category is another one that verges between the 3 and the 4, which is sad because this category, like I said, was one of the most stable. It was always a strong 4. However, because of that as well, I'm gonna give it a 4, since the world itself is well built, it's quite coherent in most things, and I think it kept building upon itself as the books progressed. And so for this one, yeah, it deserves a 4 out of 5. Second last category is writing style. Now, part of what I mentioned in the plot is related to the writing style, and also the themes that I mentioned that are revolving around the characters are also part of that writing style. And so is the capacity to kill your darlings, like I mentioned in the plot category. So there's all these things that mix together, balance out a bit. I think John Gwynne was able to strike a positive balance, although it was teetering a bit towards the start, and as we progressed through the book, it became a bit better. But I think it's mostly because some of the choices John Gwynne made don't really align with my preferences. You might think they have no problem and you actually enjoyed having those stakes, and then have those stakes removed and everything is fine and happy in the end. But yeah, for me, it doesn't gel that well. But of course, we cannot talk about writing style without also talking about the action scenes, because I think John Gwynne excels in this part. All the action scenes seem written brilliantly. They are vivid, they are bloody, they are emotional as well, tense. always ready to spring you with surprises. And that really makes me wonder, because I like the way he writes action a lot. So I just don't know if this world, the setting, or the plot itself wasn't aligned with me. And so maybe some other series of his will be more for me, but that's a question for another time. Still on this category is also pacing, and I think this was one of those details that was done well, because the book starts a bit slow, and as we progress it starts speeding up. And because this is the final book of the series, you do want it to speed up to the point of climax. And so we reach the end of the book and the series at the same time, and it's just this epic battle, and then you have the aftermath to the end of the series. And I think John Gwynne made the pacing quite well. It was always picking up, and then reach that final battle. So for this category, I'm going to give a 4 out of 5. Again, not a 5 because of those details I think related to writing style and the other categories that might not have been done as well. But this is a strong 4 for sure. And so we reach our last category, which is enjoyment. And oh boy, did this category go up and down like a roller coaster. It started off pretty badly with my disappointment with some choices, and then it increased a bit by bit, as the action scenes started showing up. And of course, when John Gwynne would make some other decisions that didn't agree with me that well, it would go down a bit more, but it kept going up and down throughout the book. On average, I think it stayed quite high still. I was definitely curious to read the ending of the series, and I think that helped me push through a lot of the parts that weren't as engaging for me. And of course, whenever there was a battle, it was fun to read, and seeing these characters finally complete their arc was definitely enjoyable, and I wanted to see those arcs, especially the ones that go from darkness to light. Those were done so well that I was reading to get to that ending and see how they would do. So for this category, it's going to be a 4 out of 5 as well. And so this ends our review. Just as a refresher, we have 4 for plot, 5 for character, 4 for world building, writing style, and enjoyment. And this gives us a final score of 4.2 out of 5. Now, this 4.2 is a bit weird because I did mention that 2 out of these 5 categories are a 4 that is very weak, almost a 3. So I would say this book might be a 3.8 to a 4.2, but I would say mostly a 4.2 because I think it builds a lot on the previous books. It does do a lot of work itself. It's just some of the choices didn't align with me. So I can understand why some people will think, nah, this is a 3.8, and some others will think, nah, this is even better than 4.2. But it's a lot of personal opinion. It's very subjective on how you deal with those choices. And then again, you can see, comparing my score with the Goodreads score, it's a 4.52. So that's quite high, and the fans really love it, and that's nothing we can do about it. It's just some people really love these type of books and those decisions, and that is fine. But in the end, I think this is a good series. The average score for the 4 books is 4.2 out of 5 for me, which is quite good considering there are 4 books. It could have gone wrong really fast. I mean, I'm reading some series here and they aren't as good, so this is overall a good series. And if you average the score of the 4 books on Goodreads, it's a 4.41 out of 5. So that's also quite close to my score, just 0.2 more. So I think in general, the consensus is this is a good series. Would I recommend to everyone? Maybe not everyone, but if you're keen to read some Nordic mythology inspired books, this is a good one. So get on it. And if you have some recommendations to me of Nordic inspired mythology books, these words should be in a different order, but let's go with that. Then recommend it, comment down below, and let me know. Of course, I'm reading one called the Hang God Trilogy by Phil the Cold Halt. That's been a good read for the first book. There's still 2 more to go. But other recommendations, I'm all ears. So yeah, let me know. And if you're new, don't forget, subscribe, like the content, and I shall be seeing you on Thursdays and Sundays, okay? See you soon.